All right, everybody. Testing the audio. Can you all hear me? All right, everybody. Testing the audio. All right, one more time. One more time. How about now? All right. There we go. All right. Awesome. Okay, audio should be good. All right. Thanks for waiting, everybody. Sorry for the technical difficulties. It's always really hard getting these live streams started, but once they go, they're usually pretty reliable. All right, everybody. So the purpose of this live stream is an Ask Me Anything session for gardening. Now that it's we're almost halfway through Feb, uh, things are going to start getting busy. So my goal is to have a couple of these sessions since this is the busiest time of year to get everybody started for gardening. So I wanted to make myself available uh, for just to answer any kind of garden questions that you may have. And I would like to ideally go for 60 to 90 minutes, somewhere in that time frame, or until my voice gives out. So thank you, everybody that is attending the live stream. I really appreciate your attendance. I really appreciate you subscribing to my channel and all of that good stuff. I'm just going to get right to it, and I'm going to start going through the chat and answering questions. First question, what zone are you in? I'm in zone 8, 8B specifically, just outside of Wilmington, North Carolina. Though I like to tell people, don't get too caught up in hardiness zones when it comes to annual vegetable gardening. That is more relevant for perennials. I'm in the same hardiness zone as most of Seattle, and we have dramatically different climates. So keep that in mind. Joanne Gervais, is it better to trellis cucumbers? I would say yes, absolutely. In my experience, it provides better airflow and it gets the cucumbers off the ground so they are less prone to getting attacked by insect pests. When you let your cucumbers trellis along the ground or vine out along the ground, any insect can just walk their way on. Getting them up off the ground is a lot better since it's harder for insects to get to them. It also provides better airflow, so they'll be less likely to come down with fungal diseases. And it's a better use of space since you can really grow two things in one location. You can trellis the cucumber vines up vertically, and you can maybe place something else lower lying on the ground. Thank you, Ramanita. I very much appreciate it. Erica Connolly, tips for bed crop rotation. This is a difficult subject because it really depends on your space. Somebody with 3 or 4 raised beds is going to struggle to rotate anything. Somebody that has a 1-acre garden is going to have probably no problem rotating things. So if you have a small space, what I generally recommend you do is when you're done turning over a crop, say you just got done growing tomatoes in a bed, grow something completely different in that soil that doesn't share a lot of the same diseases. So if you just grew tomatoes there, don't plant peppers, don't plant cucumbers. They share a lot of those same fungal infections, and they also have a lot of the same pests. Plant something in there like peas or lettuce or something completely unrelated that have very few similar characteristics and don't tend to get the same diseases. If you have enough space where you can rotate more efficiently, I would recommend you basically let an area sit still for 60 to 90 days before you replant. Cover it with a couple inches of compost and pull a tarp over it, or place some kind of natural mulch on there and just let it sit for 60 to 90 days to just relax and renutrify. So those would be my recommendations for crop rotation. Ashley Stone, getting ready to start onion sets. Any tips? I would tell you to look at my old video that I made maybe 3 or 4 years ago on planting onion sets. I will say I have had hit or miss success with onion sets. What an onion set basically is somebody starts onion seeds and then they grow into the grasses and then they start to bulb a little bit. And then somebody pulls them out of the ground and then they put them in a cool, dry place to basically go dormant, and they snip the green tops off and then you replant that onion. What I found is that sometimes onion sets get confused because they are a biennial and you don't get really good bulbing when you replant them. Sometimes they get confused and they think they're in their second year of life and they tend to split on you. I've had hit or miss success, but if you have had good results with onion sets, by all means grow them. Another thing you can do is you can grow, you can order onions that are fresh starts from a place like Dixondale Farms or another place that sells actual live onion plants online, and then you just plant them. They're a better alternative to onion sets because not only do they root more quickly, they never get confused by the calendar. My favorite thing to do is to always plant them from seed, though. In fact, onion sets or onion seeds are some of the most easiest things that you can possibly grow. This is literally an old pickle container, Grillo's Pickles. Shout out, hey Costco. If all you really have to do, put a couple inches of mix in there, sprinkle some seeds on, and in 3 weeks you'll have these. In another 3 weeks, they'll be large enough that you can separate. And not only is this way cheaper, but I find the results are way better. So got a bunch of these. Strongly recommend just get yourself a big container, sprinkle them, and then after 6 to 8 weeks, separate them and stick them right in the ground. So as you can see, I have plenty of stuff growing in my office right now. It's just that time of year. Growing in 10A, any tips? Yeah, try as many things as you possibly can. When I moved, I grew up in New Jersey, 6B, and then I moved to Philadelphia, Zone 7A. And throughout all those, then I moved down here to Wilmington, North Carolina, 8B. And everything has been different everywhere I've ever lived, and you just have to grow things, experiment with different times, track the time that you plant things in journals, try all different types of varieties of things. I mean, honestly, in 10A, I would be focusing on a lot more fruits than I would annual vegetables, honestly, because you can grow so many things like Meme sapote or black sapote or adamoyas or really cool star fruit. Lots of different types of citrus, all kinds of stuff that bear in fall and winter and early spring when most of us don't get to eat fresh food. There's lots of countless avocados that you can grow of all different types and races. But for vegetable gardens, just experiment. The thing in 10A is your seasons are largely going to be reversed. So you are probably going to want to grow things like tomatoes, cucumbers, your squashes, your melons. You're probably actually going to want to start your seeds in, I would say, maybe July, plant them out in around August. That's probably too early. Start them in August, plant them out at some point in September, or sorry, one more time. Start your seeds indoors in August when it's gross out, and then you transplant everything out in October, and then you basically use your dry season. I'm assuming you're in Florida or someplace else subtropical, and then you grow your things that we traditionally grow in the summer during winter, and you have a much better time. When are you moving to your new place in Florida? I don't know. I have a lot of family here in Wilmington, North Carolina, and it's going to take many years of saving before I get to the point where I can build a home on that land. It's just more expensive to do it that way. So I have a rough target of somewhere around 2030, Maybe that'll be 2029. Maybe that'll be 2031. I don't know. It's basically a rough 5-year plan. That's the best info I can give you. I can tell you I daydream about it every single day of my life. Jay Pennycuff, any cons of growing veggies in pure compost? Not really. No, I mean, all of my raised garden beds are filled with pure compost. When I built them 7 years ago at this point, I ordered a 10 cubic yard triaxle load of pure compost that was locally made a couple of miles down the road. They dumped it in my driveway on top of a tarp, and I wheeled with a dump cart all of that compost over. And then I did the same thing when I expanded my garden a year and a half later. So yeah, everything's pure compost in my bed, and it's only gotten better over time. So yeah, pure compost is great, unless maybe you're growing in containers. Sometimes it can break down too much and become almost like silt, and your plants may struggle to get good root aeration if you fill your containers with pure compost. But yeah, if you're growing in a raised bed garden, pure compost is awesome. Mommy Penza, how do you organize your garden? Any planners you use? Seed organizing? No. When I pick the varieties of things that I grow, I honestly use Excel spreadsheets, and then I keep a list of everything I grow every single year. Um, when it comes to planting things out, I mostly wing it because I have limited space and I'm constantly rotating things. So I plant things in areas that are available. I probably should be more organized than that, but honestly, I'm not. Hi, sir. I have worms in my pepper plants. I'm assuming you mean in the actual fruits themselves. If so, I would recommend you cover them with insect netting. That way it'll keep the bugs out. Alternatively, you can go out and get organza bags. Those little the little bags with the drawstrings that they put rice in at weddings. You can individually bag the fruit, but then you'll be bagging every single individual pepper. I think that insect netting is the best way to go. You don't need to worry about any pollinators or anything like that. Bees have no reason to go to peppers. They're wind pollinated. So they'll pollinate just fine. The peppers will just rattle in the breeze and you'll be good to go. So yeah, strongly recommend cover them in insect netting. Cole Little, would you offer garden tours? I don't really have anything to tour. I mean, I live in a very unimpressive neighborhood in Brunswick County, 15, 20 minutes outside of Wilmington, North Carolina. My yard's pretty small. It's only 8,000 square feet. So I just live on a standard residential street. There's not a whole lot to tour. Greg Lemke, what do you use to lower the pH for blueberries? I actually have a video specifically about that. I use a product called Elemental Sulfur. You'll get natural sulfur prills, and then you will place them on your soil. You'll work it into the top inch or two of the soil, and then you can dump something like pine bark nuggets on top of it, which also helps lightly acidify soil. The elemental sulfur prills are great at slowly releasing soil. Just wait until the soil is pretty warm to apply them, because if you apply them to cold soil, if you live in a cold zone, there's a chance they could decompose into, I believe, hydrogen sulfide, which you don't want. So once your soil temperature gets to about 55, 60 degrees, you apply your sulfur prills. You can do this once or twice a year, depending on the pH of your soil. I do have some linked in my Amazon storefront. I think they're like 10 or 12 or $13 a bag or something. They're pretty inexpensive and they're natural. James Shirley, hi Anthony, why no beer tonight? You must be kidding, sir. It's just off camera. Yeah, it's hard to talk for 60 to 90 minutes straight. So, and there's only so much water I can drink. Matt Caparasso, what future video topics do you plan on producing? Does this include more recipe and preservation methods? This time of year, pretty much all of my content is going to be related to starting seeds, transplanting, and the popular summer vegetables. because that's generally what people want to see this time of year. I do very limited stuff on preservation because honestly, the handful of times I've done them, they're not generally well received. There's not a lot of interest in them. I guess because it's a little bit outside of my typical lane, and they're also a lot more work to film and edit. They take a lot of cuts and things like that. So I generally reserve them for the fall and early winter when preservation is a little bit more popular and there's a lot less going on in the garden. But right now, I really want to focus on, well, everything is so time, but we really have to get moving right now, starting seeds. Where's Dale? He's downstairs. I just fed him, so he's kind of crashing on the couch. I'll call him up later, but right now he's really comfortable. Mr. McAnderson, when do you remove hay from your banana trees? Not until after last chance of frost. So that's usually the first week of April. Then I will disassemble them. It would be absolutely terrible if I went through all the work to cover them and then I removed them and they got hit by frost. Should you prune citrus? Yes, absolutely. And now we are moving into citrus pruning season. So you usually want to prune citrus right after you harvest them. That way it gives them the most amount of time to recover and get new growth put on. So that's usually going to be late February, around March 1st. And then usually they start flowering in May, at least where I live. BA, cost-effective ways to get soil. Great question. Look at your local landfill, your local recycling center, your local county transfer station. Some places offer free load your own soil, free load your own compost, free load your own wood chips. It's really expensive to dispose of stuff. So a lot of times you can go there and get stuff for free. My county, Brunswick County, North Carolina, offers free load your own mulch if you really wanted to go and get it. But just call beforehand and check the neighboring counties, check the tri-county area. So if your county doesn't have one, the neighboring county may. And again, local recycling centers are a good place to call as well. You can often get stuff for free. Other than that, if you don't have those options, the best thing to do is to call a local mulch yard and just get a big trailer delivered, because it's way cheaper to buy soil by the cubic yard than it is to buy bag soil. My watermelons have a black bottom. What to do? Does that mean that they're rotting? I've never really had that problem. That sounds to me like it's a rot condition. If that is the case, you may want to maybe get like a milk crate or something like that and get them up off the ground. You may live in an area that gets a lot of rain. That's really the best advice I could give for that. I'm not sure. If they're really small and they're blackening, that just may be a lack of pollination. So if that is the case, you may live in a low B area. So you have to take a makeup brush and transfer pollen from the male flowers into the female flowers. The female flowers will have a little baby watermelon attached to them. You have to do that while they're young and there's still a little flower on the female little baby watermelon. So you may just be having a lack of pollination issue. So those would be my two suggestions. George Gonzalez, zone 6B pineapple guava, plant on ground or pot. If you don't want to protect it, you would need to plant it in a pot. If you're okay with protecting it, you can treat the pineapple guava like I do my citrus trees. You can prune them manually, keep them small, put incandescent Christmas lights on them, or put a 60-gallon water barrel behind them, or both. Both is better, and then cover them with a plant jacket in winter. Pineapple guava is hardy to the zone 7A, 7B line, so at least once established. So you can grow them in ground if you choose to protect them. If you don't feel like doing that, then just keep them in a container because they won't survive long term. Brady 72, what's your opinion on square foot gardening? It's fine, totally fine. It's a really efficient use of space. I have nothing but good things to say. Hats, container Meyer lemon dropping leaves, Connecticut, what to do? It has granular fertilizer. If it's dropping leaves, okay, so Meyer lemons absolutely hate it when you bring them abruptly inside. This happened to me. This happened to my neighbor. If you take a Meyer lemon that was outside in a pot and then you just bring it inside in front of a window, it will freak out and partially defoliate, possibly completely defoliate. So the way you get around that is you acclimate it very slowly indoors, or you bring it inside at night and you carry it back out during the day. I'm guessing your tree is not getting enough light, so either you're going to have to carry it back outside if you're getting a warm spell, or you're going to have to get it some kind of supplemental grow light. It's probably angry at the lack of sun. Any tips for planting sugar baby watermelons in containers in South Florida? Yes, plant them now because you need to harvest them by June or July by the time your rainy season kicks in. So get them started ASAP. Plant them out in full sun this time of year. If you, once it starts getting hot in May, you may need to finish them under shade cloth. Or you can alternatively move them into a shady spot, but I'm guessing that's going to be pretty tough with the vines at that point. Oh, glad to hear it, Melissa Jimenez. Good job on your Owari Satsuma. That's my favorite orange tree of all time. Thomas Smith, how long should I leave plastic wrap on top of my pepper seedlings? Plastic wrap. Do you mean like a greenhouse dome? If that is the case, the moment you get adequate germination, you would pull the dome off. The goal with the greenhouse dome is to keep even moisture so they don't dry out really quickly, and you have to keep, and then you risk overwatering them. Once they germinate adequately, you don't want to leave them domed all the time, or you could actually develop damping off disease. So there's a law of diminishing returns where the longer you constantly give them a warm, humid, foggy environment like that, well, at some point it shifts to actually potentially hurting them. So once you're happy with the germination, you can take the greenhouse dome off. Just make sure you don't let them dry out. Lindsay, any tips on trying to sprout jacaranda seed pods in South Florida? I have never heard of that in my life. There's a lot of stuff grown in South Florida that I've never been, that I have no experience with, or I'm not even familiar with. So I'm not even going to try to tell you I know what I'm talking about. I've never even heard of that plant before. But I will say, here I go giving a comment about something I don't know about. I have had good luck where you take a paper towel and you wet the paper towel and you wrap seeds in the paper towel, you roll it up and you put it inside a Ziploc bag, and then you toss it on top of your refrigerator or in your office by your computer or someplace warm. And a lot of times within 3 to 4 weeks, little roots can form. But if you do that, you have to open that bag every day and kind of fluff it and give it fresh air, or else the seeds could rot. So that's a good way to sprout seeds. I've had good luck with fig cuttings, with American persimmon seeds, pea seeds. They'll all sprout pretty quickly if you do that. Patrick Henry, aren't you moving to Florida? I addressed this earlier, not anytime soon. It's going to be at least 5 years. I'm going to have to build a house. It's going to take a long time before I can get that far, but it will happen eventually. Karen Williams, any experience with asparagus? Yes, I've been growing asparagus for many years. I have quite a few videos on it, from the planting process to fertilizing to mulching to pruning. If you search my channel for the word asparagus, you will find lots of videos. The biggest tip I can give you for growing asparagus is, number one, get the crowns now and put them in ground as soon as your soil is workable. Don't delay. Don't wait until it gets really warm. As if your soil isn't frozen, plant your asparagus. The second is the thing that I majorly screwed up in. I planted them in a raised bed in my garden, and it blew my mind how spreading and invasive the roots are. The neighboring raised beds all have asparagus roots when you dig down 8 to 10 inches in them. So I would strongly recommend you give them a dedicated space. If I could do it all over again, I would plant 2 fruit trees 12 feet apart or something like that. And then in between, I'd plant rows of asparagus. and I'd almost have them be a bush underneath a taller fruit tree. So if you intend on growing fruit trees that are like a small canopy tree, 15 to 20 feet tall, planting asparagus underneath those trees is a good way to maximize space. I have asparagus since 1986. It was a great year. That was the year I was born. Um, yeah, asparagus will last 30 years, maybe longer if you take care of it. 40, that's really pushing it. Uh, Raymond Martinez, where do you get your San Marzano hybrid? If you're talking about Marzanera, which I grew last year, that is from Territorial Seed. So check them out. They sell it. Nikki, how soon should I start herbs indoors here in upstate New York, Zone 5B? Depends on the herb. Something frost sensitive like basil, you can't start until 6 weeks before your last frost date. But if you're talking about your cold hardy herbs, cilantro, put that in ground. You can direct sow them now, probably. Cilantro, parsley, chives, dill, all those things are frost tolerant, so you can start them now and you can plant them out 30 to 60 days before your last chance of frost. Bill Lee, how do you grow big green peppers in Wilmington? Are you talking about bell peppers? In my experience, bell peppers don't do well here. I hate growing bell peppers because I can buy one for 69 cents at the grocery store, and they're not that much worse than what I can grow. And you dedicate all the space for a bell pepper plant, you get 5 peppers, and I can never get them as nice as the ones in the grocery store, honestly. So I have elected to grow peppers that I can't get in the store and that I think are better for production. So banana peppers do absolutely fantastic here. Sweet banana and hot banana are both a must. You can grow something like a Cubanelle, which is a fairly large green pepper that'll vastly outperform a bell pepper. You can grow something like giant Marconi. You can grow poblano peppers. In my opinion, they're all better investments than bell peppers since you can just go to the store and get them. And I think they all produce better. Gwen, spinach advice, Zone 7B. Plant now, directly into your garden, like right now, like tomorrow. Because you're going to run out of growing season. If you don't get it in the ground now, before you know it, they'll bolt on you because it'll get too hot here. So just plant a spinach plant every 2 inches. Stick your finger in the ground every 2 inches. Stick a seed. You can thin them later if you want, or you can harvest them in a tight row as baby spinach. Karen Williams, your bell peppers do fabulous here in Georgia. That's good to hear. Maybe I'm not a great grower of bell peppers. I do square foot gardening for my peppers, so I give them 1 square foot per plant. So maybe I don't give them enough spacing for bell peppers. Maybe that chokes them off too much. I grow mostly smaller, more prolific peppers. So maybe it's just the way I grow them. But if you like bell peppers, by all means grow them. I just think personally that there are so many varieties of peppers out there. Why I can get them in store. Like I would just rather grow something that I can't get in the store. Karen, sun needs for spinach depends on the time of year. In the summer, you can grow spinach in shade. In fact, you probably should because they'll bolt in the sun. In the wintertime, grow them in full sun because the sun's weak. So it depends. Lee Laravia. I hope I said that right. Do you overwinter any of your peppers? Yes, I have 2 pepper plants that are 2 years old and 1 that is 5 years old. I actually recently filmed a video on that, and I hope to have that up within the next couple of weeks. So keep an eye out for that. Question, Lou, question, what can I do in clay soil to get ready to plant lemon and lime tree? I would recommend a couple of things. First off, if you haven't already sourced the trees, get ones that are grafted to trifoliate or flying dragon rootstock, which is a named variety of trifoliate orange. They tend to be more tolerant of heavier soils. Also, when you plant them in a mound. Like, don't even dig a hole. Pick a spot that you're going to put the tree and then set the tree right down in the spot and then get like 7 or 10 bags of compost and dump them all around the tree. So that way the whole tree is surrounded by compost, and then the tree isn't actually dug in the ground, and then over time it'll root itself. Maybe you can sink it 6 inches deep or something. Even that might be too much. I mean, I would really tell you to just plant the whole tree on a mound. Don't even dig it into the soil. Vincent, what part of part of Italy is your family from? You know, I don't really know all that well. I know on my mother's side we have family from the Abruzzo region. We're actually trying to plan a trip where we can go there within the next year, God willing, hopefully, while my parents are still young enough to travel. So we definitely want to spend a few days in that region. I think my father's side is more on the central western coast, maybe around Florence. I don't really know all that well, to be honest with you. I wish I knew better, but yeah, my family is very lots of people that had 6, 8, 10 kids. So it's hard to keep track. There are a lot of people in my family that I just plain old have never met. And because of that, I just don't have a big history. And I think they all slept in the same room growing up. So, Zone 6B, any advice on growing melons? Yeah, I would recommend you do what I do and grow them out on, if you're talking about watermelons or large melons, let the vines sprawl out on a black weed barrier. Not only does that keep the pests off of them, but it attracts warmth, which you really need. Another recommendation is to grow smaller melons. So if you want to grow watermelons, pick something like a sugar baby. They are a lot easier to grow. Also try smaller melons like a Kajari melon. They taste almost like a cross between a cantaloupe and a honeydew, but they're only about this big, and you can grow them in zone 4. They ripen very quickly. They're like a 60 to 75 day melon. So go to like a website like Baker Creek, rareseeds.com. They have lots of very interesting small melons that you can grow that fruit a lot more quickly than your larger melon. I've also had great luck with a variety of cantaloupe called honey rock. Honey like the sweetener, rock like rock and roll. They're very small, personal size cantaloupes, and they grow very quickly and they ripen very quickly. Thomas Smith, are you married? Yes. Yeah, Brittany doesn't show up in the videos a whole lot. Every now and again, you can catch her in Adventures with Dale. She's allergic to the camera. She wants nothing to do with it. Zone 8B, aloe and ground with incandescent bulbs. I don't really know much about growing succulents or cacti or things like that. I know that agave is planted all around here in Zone 8B, North Carolina. You'll find them everywhere around here. So I don't know if they have more cold hardy varieties of that, but I can tell you this year, my avocado tree, I don't think ever dropped below 40, even when we got well into the teens here in Zone 8. So it's very easy to keep a tree above freezing if you follow my cold protection methods. Sorry, trying to catch up on the chat. Zone 6B, citrus indoors, but fruit falls off even with me pollinating them. I have 2 suggestions. That to me screams energy problem. So I would venture a guess either they are not getting enough light or they are not getting enough fertilizer. Most likely light. So if your tree feels stressed, it will react by dropping the fruit. Make sure that it is getting plenty of light. A sunny window is probably not enough. You may have to get one of those supplemental grow lights to give it more energy. Make sure that you're fertilizing it enough because remember, the trees are limited to whatever nutrients you put in there. So they can't go hunting around the earth for nutrients. If you don't feed them constantly, I'm talking about every 10 to 14 days, they will get hungry and they will start to starve. So make sure you're feeding them at least twice a month. Yeah, I'm serious, twice a month. So yeah, feed them twice a month, get them a supplemental light. The only other thing I could think of is they're not getting enough water. So if a tree gets drought stress because the tree puts a lot of its water via transpiration into the fruits, they will react to drought stress by dropping their fruits. So if you're letting them get too dry, it could be another reason why they're dropping their fruits. King Art Channel. What fig tastes like blueberry? You know, the one fig that I think the one flavor I've never gotten from a fig is blueberry. I could tell you strawberry, raspberry, blackberry. I can't really tell you blueberry. Yeah, I don't know if I've ever come across a blueberry fig, honest to God. A blueberry tasting fig, that is. How often should I trim my onion seedlings? I have never trimmed an onion in my life, except to go out and harvest the greens as spring onions for dinner. And in which case, I never take them all from one plant. I'll take a little snip from a bunch of plants because I don't like disturbing the greenery. So I've never ever pruned an onion, and I have no reason to recommend anybody do so. Scrump, have you ever grown Baker Creek pineapple tomato? Because I'm growing it this year. Is that the one that's listed as Ananas Noir or something like that? Because I did grow that from Baker Creek maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and I got jack off the plant. Nothing. It didn't pollinate well here, and the plant did not do well in my humid summers. So for that reason, I've honestly abandoned a lot of those really pretty looking heirloom tomatoes. They just don't do well here. So I can't really give you any which way on that. Hopefully your climate's a little more forgiving than mine. Adam Hensley, awesome, not in the camera, awesome work going into breeding figs. I will tell you that you're pretty much committing to 10 years on your hands with this. I think I'm in year 4 or 5. I don't know. And I'm just starting to get fruit. And it's going to take even longer to really accurately gauge how good they are. So you're really going to be in it for the long haul, but it's pretty darn rewarding. I will have to say, it's so cool. Nathan, do you have a peanut video? Embarrassing to say, no, I do not have a peanut video. And considering North Carolina is, I think next to Virginia, is like the #1 or #2 peanut producing state in the United States. So I've never grown them. Maybe I should try because apparently they do really well here. Inferno, have you dealt with pill bugs as a pest? So I do get pill bugs in my garden, but I generally find once plants get to be about 2 or 3 inches tall, the pill bugs aren't a problem. They become just resistant to them. They're too big. So what you could do if you have a pill bug issue is either don't mulch around them until they get larger, because I have found that it's wood mulches and straw mulch that really attracts them. So if you don't place the mulch when you plant them, and then you let the plants get 3 or 4 inches tall, then place the mulch, you'll get to the point where once the pill bugs show up, the plants won't really be affected by them. So that would be my suggestion with pill bugs. You could also place milk jug greenhouses over them so they can't get to them. But I found them to be not really a problematic pest, and they're really a friend in your garden because they're breaking down all that mulch. So once you get the plants a couple inches tall, the pill bugs go from foe to friend. I thought Georgia was the capital of peanuts. I don't know, maybe they are. I know they grow them all over the South. Maybe North Carolina is #3. I know that they grow a lot of peanuts in this area, so it's embarrassing. I've never grown them. King Art Channel, how can you tell when there's a fig on your fake? I think that's a typo. May want to re-ask that question. Domestic Devo, what is the name of the cucumber that you grow? Is it Merlin? Merlin is one of them. Merlin was the best producing cucumber that I grew last year. The second best was Party Time. So I would highly recommend those two. Zone 7B, is it too early to feed 3-year-old fruit trees plant tone? No, absolutely not. No. I would say probably not. You probably could place it now because that stuff takes a solid month to break down. I would say you can wait a little bit since you do have a little bit of time. There's no big rush, but if you put it down, say somewhere near the end of February, that's probably perfect for your purposes. Zone 8B in Oregon, when can I plant fruit trees? So Oregon has an interesting climate where you can probably plant fruit trees all year round because it never really gets all that hot there, at least in the Zone 8 portion since it's pretty coastal. Maybe you don't want to plant your trees in the dead of summer, June through August, but aside from that, any other time's a good time. So I would say right now, today, tomorrow, perfect time to plant your fruit trees. Uncle Hunter, are you growing plums? Yes, I planted plums last year. I have, but they're not regular plums. They're pluots and plum cherries. So I've never been a big fan of just a straight plum, but I do kind of like the hybrids, the interspecific hybrids. So it's probably going to be 2 or 3 years until I have any fruit to show for it, and I'm pretty new at it. But I do have some plum type trees planted. King Art Channel, how can you tell when there's a fig on your tree? Because there's a fig on the tree. I'm not quite sure how to answer that question. So generally speaking with figs, the new wood forms after your last frost date. It'll form for about 60 days, and about 60 days in, you'll start getting little figlets forming at the nodes, which they kind of look like little the caps for your tires, the valve stem caps. They kind of look like that shooting out the side. So that'll probably happen about 2 months after your last frost date. Kevin S., have you tried growing contender peach? No, I have 2 peach trees. I have Betty and Bonanza. I only plant trees, peach trees that begin with a B. Figs are actually a syconium, which is an inverted sac full of hundreds of flowers. And they are, taxonomically speaking, a fruit. It's scientifically agreed upon that they are a fruit. So, yeah, they are a fruit, and they're a syconium. They're a very interesting thing. Just got here. How's Dale? I think it's about time I call the beast. Dale, do you want a treat? Dale! He's downstairs on the couch. Michael Adams, what zone are you in? 8. 8B. Dale, come! I have a treat! Here he comes. Come here, Pecker. Come here. Come. No, you got to come up. You got to say hi to everybody. Say hi. Say hello. Dale, look at the camera. Look at the camera. Show everybody your beautiful face. Hi, this is Dale. Dale, gentle. 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 Oh, no! Oh, you drooler. Is that good? Good. There's Dale. Can you make a beginner video for container fruit tree growing? We live in zone 6B. I have a lot of videos over the years on fertilizing trees in containers and growing trees in containers, but they are largely relegated to fig videos. If you check my older videos from 4 or 5 years ago, that's when I planted a lot of my figs in containers. And to be completely honest with you, there's no real difference between growing a fig in a container or an apple or an orange or a peach in containers. Just make sure you get yourself a dwarfing variety of whatever you want to grow that's appropriate for containers, and just follow the same procedures I did with my figs. Use the same type of mix, fertilize them every 2 weeks, aka twice a month during the growing season, and keep them pruned. You're going to have to prune them annually because when you plant a tree in a container, they're going to become root bound within a year or two. So once you get that root structure in that container, the problem is the trees are going to top out because they can't grow taller than the roots can support. So it's going to be very important that you prune them back about 33%, maybe a little bit more every single year, because you're going to need a constant cycle of new wood formation. So you really need to prune any fruit trees in containers pretty well, or else eventually they'll top out, they'll reach their peak size, and then you won't get any more fruit after a certain time. Can you plant blueberries in fresh cut tree stumps? I don't know the answer to that question. It would be a very interesting experiment. If you did, I would have to think you'd have to do something like hone a hole out in it and add some kind of potting mix for the time being for things to grow in. And then maybe over time, the stump would decay and then the hole would get larger and larger. I don't know the answer to that question. It would be quite an interesting experiment. My apple, cherry, and nectarine tree have buds forming. Is it okay to prune them? Yes, but you need to do it as soon as possible. The longer you wait, the more it'll stress out the tree. So it's still probably fine to do it. My peaches are starting to get little bud swell, and I haven't gotten to it yet. So do it now. Don't delay. All the leaves on my tangerine tree are brown and falling off after a hard freeze. Is there any hope? Yes. Citrus defoliate themselves as a protection against freeze damage. All you can do is carry it to a very sheltered location. Don't expose it to any more freezing temperatures. Get it somewhere safe and protected. And you're just going to have to wait 2 to 3 months. It's going to take months for the extent of the cold damage to actually show. Eventually, if you get to the point, say in May or June, if you start to see new shoots forming out of the wood, that'll be the time that you're going to have to start cutting off the dead wood. But for the time being, get it protected and just kind of don't mess with it. Just make sure it doesn't dry out completely, but don't overwater it. Don't get it really wet. That'll only stress it out more. So keep it ever so lightly moist, and you just have to wait. Did you have any leaf drop with citrus early on? No. I have never had any of my citrus trees defoliate. That being said, citrus do lose their leaves this time of year because evergreen trees they just replace their leaves over the course of the year, so they're in a constant state of leaf drop. It tends to be a little bit more this time of year than say in the middle of summer because now is when they're going to get ready to start flushing their new growth. So this is an enhanced time of leaf drop, but it should never be like an oak tree where you have everything lose their leaves. How far apart do you plant your tomatoes? Determinate tomatoes or dwarf tomatoes, 18 inches. Indeterminate tomatoes, 24 inches. What do your members receive? So what YouTube allows you to sort comment responses. So I'm able to give rapid responses to comments for channel members because it allows me to specifically select them. It used to be that I was able to respond to everybody's comments on this channel, but now I get several thousand a month, and it's literally impossible to keep up with. I try to respond to several dozen comments every single day, but there's only so much I can do. So one of probably the best benefit to being a channel member is that I'm able to pretty much respond to 100% of all channel members' comments at all times. The other thing is you get the added benefit of knowing that you get to support my channel, which is very helpful. You also get some custom Dale emojis that you can use in the chat, which it elevates your comments to know that you're a member of the channel. Do you plan on planting many mango trees in your Florida property? No, because it's in Zone 9B, so I will need to protect them similar to how I protect my avocados and citrus here. So I don't want to plant many of them. I want to plant maybe 2 or 3 of them, smaller condo type mangoes in a protected location. But keep in mind, I also want to experiment with some things like a custard apple, maybe a meme sapote, maybe a black sapote, and none of those things are hardy to where I bought the property, which is about an hour north of Orlando. So I don't want to drive myself insane protecting dozens of trees. I would like to, I would like to probably keep it to a dozen or less. So I have to be really selective with what I'm willing to protect. Indeterminate tomatoes are 24 inches apart. Best time to up pot a lemon tree doesn't really matter. They're evergreen trees. Generally speaking, it's better to do things. You want to do it probably after harvest. I actually take that back. The best time to plant to up pot a lemon tree is probably going to be in February or March. You want it to be after you've harvested it clean, but before it flowers, because all of those things take a lot of energy. So usually March, the tree has been picked clean and has no more fruit on it, but it hasn't yet put on a lot of new growth and flower. So that's probably your best time. I can tell you the worst time, and that is when the fruit is large and trying to ripen, because if you stress it out, your tree could drop its fruit. Would you prune a 3-year-old citrus when it's dropping leaves? Again, depends why it's dropping leaves. If it's just natural leaf drop that tends to happen this time of year, that doesn't really matter. If it's because it got zonked with cold and it's struggling and it freaked out and dropped all its leaves, you don't want to prune it because that could be additional shock that could kill the tree. So if it's just a natural leaf drop process or the tree is otherwise healthy, the best time to prune your citrus is probably going to be February, March, definitely before April. So the best time is going to be after you basically harvest the fruit off the tree. What is the germination rate for carrot seeds as they get older by the year? Can't answer that question. It's entirely based on how good the seeds were from day one and how well you've stored them. I've had 3-year-old seed that has germinated great, almost as good as new seed. I store my seeds in a cardboard box on top of a stack of my jeans in my closet in the bedroom because it's the coolest, darkest, driest area. What's your favorite vegetable? It's like asking somebody what their favorite kid is. It depends. My favorite vegetable is what's in season and what I'm hungry for at the moment. But the real answer to your question is probably tomato. I think I probably could not live or want to live anymore if I could not eat tomatoes. All right, Adam. Okay, I see you. Crossing Celeste and Salib to make a persistent caprifig and then crossing that with Black Madeira Coladam. I'm not sure what your question is. I feel like it's missing half of it. I think you're making a persistent caprifig. If your goal is to breed a persistent caprifig, I'd have to ask you why. Why would you want to spend 5 to 7 years waiting just to get a caprifig? So I'm going to assume I don't understand the question. Noah Wright, if seeds happen to get stored in an extremely cold location, does that ruin their germination? I can tell you it definitely doesn't help their germination, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they won't germinate. You're going to have to test and find out. You, generally speaking, do not want to store your seeds below refrigerator temperature. It's too cold. But that being said, there are people that have germinated 50-year-old heirloom seeds. So it's kind of, generally you want to store your seed, in a cool, dry place, a cool room temperature. Good beginner fruit tree for 6A. Ooh, pawpaw, easy piece of cake. And I would also say one of the American Asian persimmon hybrids, like a Nikita's Gift. You'll need 2 separate pawpaw varieties because they're self-sterile. You need 2 unique varieties to cross-pollinate. So get yourself 2 pawpaw trees and get yourself a Nikita's Gift persimmon, and you'll have basically 3 foolproof trees. Those would be my recommendations. Also, blueberries are probably one of the easiest things in the world that you could grow. So are blackberries. What do you think about big box store fruit trees? I have never and will never buy a tree that is grafted that I don't know what the rootstock is. I am very anal retentive about my rootstock. I want to know exactly what the size of the tree is going to be. I want to know what the soil type the rootstock prefers is. I want rootstocks that have nematode resistance. I want all of those things. So I've never seen a big box store fruit tree tagged with what the rootstock is. I don't understand why they don't put them on. So for that reason, I do not buy fruit trees from big box stores. If you don't care what the rootstock is, and you don't really care what size the tree grows to, because they do such a terrible job tagging them, and you get a good deal, feel free to plant it. There's lots of people out there growing trees from Home Depot and Lowe's that are awesome. Just me personally, I like knowing every little thing about the thing that I'm planting. Question, I had a pear tree that got fire blight last year. I tried to treat it, but it came back during the fall. I had an absolute nightmare with fire blight with my apples last year. I had to really cut back the espalier cordons. It was a nightmare. I had to cut them back probably 3 or 4 times and douse the tree in liquid copper fungicide. And eventually the problem stopped. It took numerous treatments of liquid copper and numerous cutbacks, but it eventually got it under control. This year, I am going to start spraying my apple trees and pear trees with liquid copper the moment they start budding out. The moment I get bud break, I'm not messing around this year. They're getting liquid copper treatment. Have you grown watermelon vertically? Yes. And I got no watermelons because they all fell off the vines. If you want to do that, make sure that you're only growing small watermelon. And no, I'm not going to do that thing where I take old pairs of underwear and tie it up and have these like weird baskets hanging them. I have too much other stuff to do. But if you want to grow larger watermelon vertically, you're going to have to find a way to tie them off and support them. How do you keep squirrels out of your container garden? I've never had squirrels in my container garden. My 6-foot perimeter fence around my yard keeps them away. And when they do run on my fence, Dale loses his mind. He chases after them. So I've just never really had a squirrel problem. One of the things you can do is, if you are having an issue, get yourself a bird feeder and fill it up with seeds that squirrels like, and make it a bird feeder that squirrels can easily access. Because I'm telling you right now, fruits have high water content, low calorie density, and just sugar. Squirrels really want the high fat, high calorie density nuts and seeds. So if I'm a squirrel and I have an all you can eat buffet of nuts and seeds, why would I mess around with a fruit? So feed them, give them something else. They're lazy rodents and they don't want to work if they don't have to. So give them something better to eat. It's like, why eat peas if you can eat steak? It's warm in 8B, Texas. Can I still plant English peas? Yeah, I'm in 8B and I haven't planted my peas yet. Your climate probably gets hotter faster than mine, but I don't plant mine for another 2 or 3 weeks. So you should still be okay. And if it does get hot, just get yourself shade cloth. I want everybody to invest in a piece of shade cloth. Spend the $20. It'll pay for itself in one season with the additional harvest that you get. I have 8 shade tarps, 7 eShare brand and 1 off brand that I did not think was as good a quality. So I highly recommend the eShare brand. Really awesome. And if it gets hot, just put the shade cloth over them and you won't have an issue. Mole solution. I don't make videos about moles because people will be angry with the way I care for moles. I get the big steel traps and then I put them down and then they kill the mole. And then when I see I caught a mole, I bring Dale out because he's a natural hunting dog, and I pull the mole out, and I praise Dale for helping catch the mole. And he loses his mind. He gets so excited and he gets so happy. So the mole does not die in vain. The mole dies to make Dale feel like he is really helping around the yard. But that's the only solution I found for moles. Check for them every single day. And if you see a little tunnel form, use a mole trap. It's brutal, but what's the alternative? I haven't found a better alternative. What are some tips on growing lemon trees in the middle of North Carolina? I would strongly recommend you watch my citrus videos and you watch my cold protection videos. I have so many of them. It'll be more work for you, but again, if I can keep them at 45 degrees here, no problem. If your zone is 10 degrees cooler, I still think you have a shot. Pick yourself really cold hardy citrus. Get yourself like a Yutsu tree. You can maybe try an Owari Satsuma. Yutsu is one of the hardiest varieties of citrus, and you can use it like a lemon. You can also get yourself a citrus variety called Ichang, I-C-H-A-N-G. Call Stan McKenzie at McKenzie Farms in Scranton, South Carolina. Just type it in Google Maps, McKenzie Farms, Scranton, South Carolina. Call him up on the phone, ask him what he recommends. Is liquid copper safe in organic gardening? Yes, if you get OMRI certified liquid copper. You can get it on Amazon. You can get 100% organic liquid copper concentrate. I think Bonide sells it. So yes, just don't abuse it. You're not. They have application frequencies listed. So, don't use it more than it says that you're supposed to use in a season. What is the best advice for grown fig trees? I don't know what you mean by that. Do you mean what's my advice for a fig tree once it's big and grown, or what's my advice for growing fig trees? I would tell you to look at my fig videos. I mean, I have so many fig videos, it's ridiculous. I could go on and on and on for hours. But I have all the content and all the questions already answered. Are you friends with James Prigioni? We text about once or twice a month. We just check in on each other and see how we're doing. So we have a casual friendship. Sometimes we bounce ideas off of each other as well and look for inspiration. He lives about 45 minutes from where I grew up. So I'm pretty familiar with the area. How is the best way to keep deer and rabbits away? You have to get a fence. It's the solution. It's the only answer to the question. I know a lot of people don't want to spend the money or put up fence, but if you want to keep deer and rabbits away, the only thing you can do that will work is good fencing. It's the only answer. Any tips on germinating persimmon seeds? Yes. This is how I did it. Get yourself a paper towel, wet it, wring it out, wrap the persimmon seeds in the paper towel, wrap it up like this, fold it over, put it inside a Ziploc bag, and then throw it on a seedling heat mat set to 80 degrees. And they should sprout for you in about 3 to 4 weeks. I did that and they all sprouted no problem. Just you're going to have to occasionally open up the bag and give it fresh air, and also make sure that your paper towel isn't growing mold. If it starts to grow mold, you're going to have to switch it out for a fresh paper towel and bag. Would you ever collab with Epic Gardening? Yeah, absolutely. I don't know Kevin. I've never spoken with him, and since he lives literally 3,000 miles away from me on the absolute opposite end of the country, it's never really been a consideration. The reason why James Prigioni and I had a collaboration is because my family's in New Jersey, so I go up there frequently, and it's not a big lift to drive up to his place. And I probably will do it again, hopefully, God willing. But I would like to collaborate with more people. Just it would be hard with Kevin because he's so far away. Any peach varieties you recommend? I have not successfully fruited peaches yet because my peach trees are only a year and 2 years old. So I'm growing Betty and Bonanza. So we'll see how they do long term. How do you get sponsors? I've never gotten a sponsor. I couldn't tell you. I think the way that larger channels do sponsorships is they usually sign up with agencies. Sometimes people email you wanting to sponsor you, but I always feel like those emails are kind of sketchy. I don't know if they're legitimate or not. You'd probably need to sign up with an agency, but I've never done a sponsorship. I would recommend you. I would recommend you look up some kind of sponsorship company and see if you can get in with them. You can literally Google how to get sponsored on YouTube, and you'll probably get 1,000 better answers than I could give you. What can be done regarding rust? Depends on what you're growing. Generally speaking, the best natural method is to get liquid copper fungicide and use it for prevention. Spray before rust takes over. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So as soon as your stuff starts leafing out, that's when you start spraying with liquid copper, and you have to get on a routine, and you have to maintain that routine. Any plan on doing a Feijoa video again? Feijoa, depends on who you ask. Yeah, but the season for that is October and November, so it's not going to be anytime soon. But I do have probably 3 or 4 on it. Collab with David the Good. Again, I would like to. I think he's in Florida. I've never talked to him, so I don't really have a relationship with him. And Florida is pretty far. Eventually, once I make my way down there, long term, there's definitely a lot of people I'd love to meet up with down there. What is your day job? I am an electrical engineer, and I'm a professional engineer that works in the civil space designing fiber optic cable backbones for state DOTs and other agencies. And then as soon as I tell people what I do, their eyes gloss over and they say, oh my God, why did I ask what you do for a living? I couldn't be less interested in fiber optic backbone networks. Where do you get mature trees when you want a head start? So every year I post videos as to where to get trees, usually in the fall. I made one a couple of months ago where I tell you every place I get trees from. But to further distill down your question, I do not recommend you get really big trees for a head start because I haven't found that really big trees give you a head start. The bigger the tree you start with, the longer the transplant shock and the establishment period. So a lot of times smaller trees catch up to bigger trees. Now, I'm not saying that a tree this big is going to catch up to a tree that's 4 feet tall. But what I am telling you is that an 18-inch tree will catch up to a 36-inch tree. So get yourself trees that are probably about 18 inches tall, less than 24 inches, definitely. You will pay a lot less money, and they will catch up to a larger tree. So don't go draining your wallet on something big that's just going to stall for a longer period of time. Does Dale have any plans to start his own channel? Dale says my channel is his channel, and I agree with him. He is really he's the real star of the show. He's a lot smarter and better looking than I am. Do you follow Jera's Garden from Orlando for new homestead? No, I don't really follow any homesteading channels because while that is a major goal of mine, because I live on a small plot of land in an HOA, it's not really something I'm doing right now. So it's future goals. It's the dream life that I really want. But right now, I follow a ton of gardening channels, but not much about homesteading. I mostly follow food forests, permaculture, and vegetable gardening. My fall rutabagas are the width of a carrot. Should I let them keep growing or start over in spring? My fall rutabagas are just starting to grow now, and I've never grown them before. So this is a learning experience for me. I wouldn't expect them to be ready for at least a couple months because the daylight in the winter is just so weak and so short that they can't adequately grow. So they're going to catch up. They'll do just fine. Let them go and wait until they get to the desired size that you want. And also start more seed now so you have a successive crop behind it. Do you think fruit trees from big box stores I don't know where that question go. I think the question is, do you think, oh, here we go. Do you think fruit trees from big box stores will give fruits? Yeah. I mean, why wouldn't they? Of course they'll give fruits. Whether the rootstock is the right rootstock for your soil type, that I don't know, which is why I don't buy grafted trees from big box stores, because they don't label the rootstock for no good reason. But aside from that, it's the same scion that you get from anybody else. So if you don't really care what your rootstock is, or you live in a climate, or you have good soil and it doesn't matter what you plant, there's no reason why your big box trees won't do as awesome as any other nursery, and you'll probably save a lot of money. So if you're happy with what your big box store carries and you have good soil, then just get them there. 7B, should I start my super hot pepper seeds now? I would say you should have started them 2 weeks ago. So yes, the second best time is now. Absolutely start them a full month at least before you start your other stuff. In fact, I'll show you mine. Okay, so these right here are some early determinate tomatoes that I'm going to grow in containers and get them out a month early. So I have a red snapper right here. I have a Celebrity Plus. Oh, look at this. They're getting so big, the peat pellets are all starting to stick together. The roots are growing into each other. So I have these beautiful, beautiful tomatoes that you see right here, and some basil, because I always like to start a few things early. Now, in here are the super hot peppers that I started before these tomatoes. So again, these tomatoes were started 2 weeks at least after I started these little hot peppers there. So look at that. These two are chocolate scorpion. This is a Caribbean fish pepper. And then my Martinique peppers didn't germinate because my seed is getting so old, so I just re-sowed them. They're going to be way behind. So that goes to show you, again, these super hot peppers, that's after several weeks, maybe 3 weeks, maybe more. And then we have red snapper, half the amount of time. And then this is all parsley. So you can see I planted all these at the same time. You can see how big the parsley is. In fact, it's too big. And you can see how far behind the peppers are. So that goes to show you how brutally slow super hot peppers are. Okay. How long can tomato seedlings survive in a 3x3 inch starting container before transplant? That depends on how much fertilizer you gave them, how the varieties you're growing, how warm your room was. If you were growing them in 77-degree room temperature, they're going to need up potting way before if you put them down in a 60-degree basement. So if you need more time because you started everything too early, move them to a cool location that's 60 degrees, because that will slow down their progress dramatically. Don't put them in a place that's like 40 degrees. They'll develop nutrient deficiencies. But if you move them to a location with cooler temperatures, that will slow down their metabolic rate. Just keep in mind, they need a lot of light. So if you have your grow lights set up in a nice balmy warm office like I'm in right now, and you started them too early, well, now you're going to have to move your grow lights to the cooler spot. What tropicals are you going to grow in Florida? It depends what daydream I'm having at the moment. Tropicals are going to be tough. Subtropicals, obviously I'm going to grow a few citrus. I'll be limited because of the HLB disease down there. I'll have to grow things like sugar bell and Bear's lemon and finger lime because they're resistant to it. I'm going to be growing many different avocados. I have just fallen in love with the West Indian types that are really the really larger ones. So I have dreams of many different avocado trees. I will grow star fruit because they do well and they can take a hard freeze pretty good. Obviously, I will have lots of banana trees planted underneath understories for freeze protection, frost protection. I will have a few condo mangoes. I would like to have a black sapote. I've been doing research on things like red custard apple, on things like May. I would like to possibly grow one of them, but they're going to need cold protection. So there's a lot of stuff that I want to do. I'm just going to have to take it as it comes. Do I have chickens? No, chickens are the first thing banned in my HOA. If I got chickens, people would be throwing bricks at my house. No, no, the neighborhood's way too close here. It would be too noisy. And also, I don't have the ability of taking care of them in the small backyard. It would be a mess. Thank you so much, Robert Dodd. I very much appreciate it. I have 12 by 12 garden bed in Charleston, South Carolina. Thought it was plenty, but running out of space. Any advice on how to pare down varieties? Companion planting, paring down varieties has been my kryptonite. I seem to only be able to add varieties. I really struggle paring them down. But I actually made a video 2 or 3 weeks ago exactly referencing this, where I said I was doubling down on my tomatoes. I'm actually almost cutting my tomato varieties in half and growing less plants overall. But I'm planting my best varieties because my thoughts are if I plant only the best varieties that I've grown over the years, I can get more fruit growing less plants rather than wasting time on these heirlooms that don't grow here. So what I would recommend you do is use space-saving varieties. So instead of growing big, crazy, indeterminate tomatoes, start growing some determinate varieties like Celebrity or Red Snapper, which are great performers, or Bella Rosa. Grow tomatoes from the Dwarf Tomato Project. They take up a lot less space. And when you do that, you can interplant them more easily with things like peppers and basil. I also had fantastic success. If you sort my videos by popularity, I have an onion video that has like 2 million views where I showed you how to interplant onions and peppers. And then I ran fertigating drip irrigation lines in between the rows. The onions and the peppers were some of the best companion planting that I've ever grown. So I would say plant them together. You can also grow leeks intermittently and green onions intermittently, interplanted with anything. So those are some things I'd recommend. Tomatoes, peppers, onions, and tomatoes, peppers, onions, and basil all grow very well together. Is it a bad idea to grow sweet potatoes in 100% compost? Yes. If you want to grow sweet potato vines and have no potatoes, grow them in compost. I made a video on this last year. If you look at my videos, my sweet potato harvest video from last fall, I specifically showed you how to make sweet potato mix. What you want to do is use about half sand. Sweet potatoes like growing in crap soil. And when I say crap soil, I mean like the sandy southern yellow pine soil that we have here in the coastal Carolinas. So I mixed clay sand, peat, and just a small amount of compost because you do need some organic matter in there. They are plants overall, after all, but they like low nutrient soil. So don't give them a lot of compost. Don't give them a lot of organic matter. Give them bone meal. Give them slow release granulated fertilizer. Restrict nitrogen. Don't give them much water soluble fertilizer at all. That's the key to growing sweet potatoes. Do you have chickens? No. No, they're the first thing banned in my HOA. I prefer to grow sweet potatoes in mostly clay soil. I think the key is that the soil has to be low in organic matter and not rich in nitrogen. That's the real key. Now, if I had heavy clay soil where I lived, I'd have major problems because we get so much rain here in North Carolina in the summer. We get 40 to 50 inches of rain every summer. That's just in the summer. So it would be tough. But if you don't get as much rain, it may work out better. But I would recommend if you're making a container mix, do 40 to 50% play sand. How's that Peroni? Starting to get warm, but I got to say, Peroni's my favorite beer. It's my favorite all-purpose beer. It's not the best when it's really hot out. It's not the kind of beer that you want to mow your lawn with when it's 90 degrees out. But an all-purpose beer at dinner, beer with Italian food, beer in the cooler weather, love it. What does my front yard look like? Like the most boring HOA front yard you've ever seen. To the innocent bystander, they'd never know. I do have probably 7 or 8 palm trees in my front yard. That's where my big fruiting dwarf banana is. I have 2 citrus trees in my front yard, but they're still small, so people don't know what they are yet. I do have a fig in my front yard, but it got hit by an ambrosia beetle and I had to cut it down, so it finally regrew, but it's small again. One day, when the oranges are going, when the fig tree's big, it'll probably look more impressive. But right now, it's just a lawn and some palm trees. Yes, yeah, this is my 555 beer. Slow release. How can I find out our last frost date? Go to Google, type in last frost date by zip code. You'll get several different websites. Punch in your zip code for all of them, and then take an average of the 3 or 4. Do you have any dual grafted citrus? No, not with citrus. I do have a 4-in-1 pluot. And I made my own 3-in-1 Asian pear. But those are my only multi-grafted trees. But there's nothing stopping you from a 2-in-1 citrus. Did you plant the Stewart because the Leela isn't productive? I planted the Stewart because apparently I thought I don't have enough stuff to protect in the winter. But yeah, I will tell you, the Leela is one of the most beautiful trees I've ever seen. I'm so proud of my Leela avocado, but boy, does the production stink. It is just taken so long for it to hold its fruit. And apparently now that Leela has become popular enough that more people are growing it, that is becoming evident across the internet. When I bought Leela, nobody was growing Leela. Nobody knew about it. Nobody was talking about it. So I didn't know. I just knew that it was a very cold, hardy, semi-dwarf avocado. So it was one of the only options for my area. I did not know that it was going to take 5 to 6 years to get any fruit at all off of it. It makes fruit every year. It just drops them. It drops the fruit. This year, last year, it finally held 6 or 7. Hallelujah. So I think it's finally getting to the age where it's starting to hold its fruit. Apparently, Stewart is supposed to be the most Hass-like of the cold, hardy Mexican avocados, and it's supposed to be a lot more prolific than Leela. So it's also not as cold hardy. So I want to give it a shot. I'm hoping it'll be more productive. And by the time Stewart bears fruit, hopefully my Leela is doing a lot better. I would really love to get to the point where I could have avocados here for 2 months fresh. What if I accidentally trim my apple and peach tree more than 30%? You're fine. It's going to grow back. It's going to do just fine. And you may find out that your trees appreciated the excess pruning. Maybe it's not excess. The only way that you'll find these things out is if you do them. So try over pruning your trees 1 year and see what they do. See if that helps them or hurts them. If I were to listen to internet videos that only say to prune your trees, 10 to 20% or something like that, I wouldn't know that things like fig trees love being pruned 50 to 60%. You find these things out the hard way sometimes. So just experiment. What is the best citrus tree? That is completely up to the individual. It depends what you want to grow. Do you want a lemon? Do you want a lime? Do you want an orange? Do you want a kumquat? Do you want a calamondin? What do you want? I can tell you that if I only had space for one citrus tree, it would be my Owari Satsuma. That is personally my favorite citrus tree. But it's not necessarily because it tastes the best. Um, when my caracaras produced fruit, I thought that caracara was the greatest piece of citrus I ever grew. But the problem is, in 3 years, it only made 3 fruits, whereas my Owari Satsuma by year 3 was making 100 fruits. So, and it's also more cold hardy. So, and it tastes 98% as good. So, in a perfect world, I would say maybe the caracara was the best tasting, but my Owari Satsumas have been so good this year that maybe I'm wrong. The best citrus is the piece that I'm eating at the time. But if I could only grow one, it would be Owari. How are your new metal beds? Right now, empty, but they look good as the day that I put them in. So I will be growing a lot of melons in my metal beds this year because I put cattle panel trellises up against them. So I'm looking forward to that. Favorite flower plants to grow from sunflowers. So one of my weaknesses as a gardener is that I haven't spent enough time growing flowers. So this year I ordered a bunch of flowers and I'm going to try to mass sow the ground. I'm just going to scatter them and see what comes up. That's my plan. I want to really grow more flowers this year. But when I worked on a farm growing up, my favorite flowers that we grew were the big zinnias. So next to the sunflowers. So next to sunflower, it will probably be zinnia. Elizabethtown, North Carolina here. Please recommend where to get fig cuttings. Go onto YouTube and type in where to buy fig cuttings. You'll probably get my video as the first result. Years ago, I made a huge in-depth video on everywhere to buy figs online. My favorite place is probably FigBid, but it's an auction site. So if you don't like the eBay style of buying, you won't like FigBid. They do have a lot of buy it now stuff on there though. But FigBid's my number one. Then after that, probably Harvey, which is he's Figaholics, but I think his sale's over by now. Might be too late. FigBid's going to be number one. Can you keep honeybees in your backyard? I don't know if that's against the HOA, but beekeeping is not something I'm personally interested in. Could I grow an Owari Satsuma in Nashville? Yes, if you can give it 15 degrees of protection without fail. With just water barrels, I've gotten as cold as 14 degrees here, and they were all at 24 underneath a double frost blanket. So if I can keep 14 at 24, I would think you could keep 0 at 14. So I would say it's feasible, yeah, but you're going to need a lot of protection. I would say Yutzu would be a better selection, but that's not a sweet citrus. If you want to give it a try, Owari is going to be one of your best bets, unless you grow something like Changsha, which is the 10-degree tangerine. They are very seedy, but apparently they taste good. What is the most hard plant that I grow? Watching you from Egypt. Thank you so much for watching all the way from the opposite end of the world. That is awesome. Thank you so much. The hardest plants that I've grown so far have been apples because my climate is just so humid and so full of disease, and I've had such a fire blight problem that I've had to cut them back. I still haven't gotten fruit off of them. So this year, I'm really going to have to adopt a copper spraying routine. I'm going to have to douse these things in copper. They are hard to grow here where I live in the coastal southeast. So I would say apples are probably the hardest thing I grow right now. Too many cedars here. So are you referring to cedar apple rust, which I believe is actually from a juniper, not from a cedar. It's from the false cedar. It's the juniper that everybody thinks is a cedar. Come to Florida. Our gardens are doing great. You say that now. I'll talk to you in 6 months when everything's dead in August. No, I'm really looking forward to Florida one day, but my parents live here, my wife's parents live here, and I don't have the money to move to Florida yet. My God, has Florida gotten expensive? But one day, I'm I'm really looking forward to it, and I'm the kind of person that always needs a 5-year plan, so I'm really looking forward to it one day. North Carolina needs you. Well, you're stuck with me for at least another 5 years. By then, I will have so much North Carolina content, I genuinely think you won't need me anymore. In your opinion, is it better to grow watermelons over mulch or over cloth/plastic? In terms of keeping insect pests easily weed barrier. Mulch attracts insects. It just does. Fact of the matter. Um, I know a lot of people don't like plastic in their garden, but then I would ask those same people, how much are you drinking out of a water bottle or any kind of can? Which, by the way, aluminum cans are lined with plastic. So when you drink out of a can, you also drink out of plastic. So, there's a lot of people worried about plastic in their garden, but they drink stuff out of plastic bottles. If you're okay with putting it in your garden, I think that has been the secret to watermelon production for me. Will you be trying out mangoes at any time? No, no, I will not be growing any mangoes until I move to Florida one day. It's too much work to try to keep one of them alive here because they're too tropical. And I'm not putting them indoors because my sunroom already looks like an insane asylum for plants. And Brittany's enough at me for all the stuff I'm growing in there. So unfortunately, I will not be growing a mango until I'm well into my 40s. Any advice for aphids and hornworms? Well, the best way to not have hornworms is to check your plants over every single day. The second best way is to spray them regularly with BT or spinosad. Eventually, you will miss some, so having a treatment routine with BT or spinosad is the way to go. With aphids, all you need is a natural vegetable oil spray. If you are having a terrible infestation of aphids, I would recommend a quick pyrethrin treatment. If you only have a small amount of aphids, just a little bit of dish soap and a little bit of vegetable oil is really all you need, and that'll smother them. How do you grow pineapples? Move to Florida. If you don't move to Florida, you're probably going to have to grow them in a container. That is not something I've ever grown, and I don't want to pretend that I know what I'm talking about when it comes to pineapples. Harvey's last post, he says he was still pruning. All right, if you go to figaholics.com, okay, then you click on cuttings page. It looks like he doesn't have them up yet. He must be really late this year. Wow, he usually has them up in in late January. So there you go. Harvey is the man to buy cuttings from. That guy's got more cuttings than anybody on earth. So yeah, go to figaholics.com/cuttings.htm, and he doesn't have the date up there yet. So I don't know when he's having the sale. Does your HOA allow you to have a greenhouse? I don't know the answer to that question. Anytime we build anything, we have to submit this architectural request. There's nothing in the HOA covenant about a greenhouse. So my guess is the answer would probably be yes if I submitted the form, but then you'd probably have to argue back and forth about what size is allowed. Either way, my backyard's not big enough for one. I would never spend the money to build like a 12-foot greenhouse or something like that. I just don't see it as worth it. If I were to build a greenhouse, it would be like 24 feet by 40 feet or 50 feet or something like that. Because the thing about a greenhouse is if you build a small one, it's probably going to cost you 10 grand. If you build a big one, it's probably going to cost you 15. So, well, $5,000 is a lot of money when you're talking about a little tiny one for 10 grand versus a huge one that you can basically live in. To me, it's kind of like do the big one, and my yard's just not cut out for that. Eventually, if and when the day comes that I'm lucky enough to make it down to Florida, I will build a real deal greenhouse. I will build a monster greenhouse, and because I want to grow undercover. So I think that's the way to go. HOAs suck. When I lived on a dead end street in New Jersey my entire life, and let me tell you, sometimes I wish I had an HOA there because of all the people that had front trucks and cars rotting in their front yards. So there are benefits to HOAs. The guy that lived across from us on the street, sometimes I wish I had an HOA there. Opinion on longue-de-doute. I have one. So I've tried to grow longue-de-doute 3 times. The first 2 died, and the third one I've never gotten figs off of them because they keep rotting. So I don't think they tolerate the humidity. I would not grow them here. Do you ever use rabbit manure? No, I have no access to rabbits. I mean, I guess you could use it if you wanted. Just don't put it fresh around your plants. What's your Subway order? Tuna? I have never ordered food from Subway in my life. I haven't ordered a pizza since college. Delivery. I don't do delivery. I'm an either cook it at home or go to the restaurant and eat kind of guy because everything I've ever ordered from delivery is basically like, hey, let's throw it in a steamer for 45 minutes and it ruins it. Delivery to me is like pay more money for something that's wrecked by the time it gets to your house. But I love cooking, so I don't do delivery because I am a crazy Italian American cooking fiend. Anthony, what is your dream car? So right now, none, because I don't care about cars anymore. But when I was growing up, when I was a teenager, I was obsessed with American muscle cars. My first car that I ever bought was a V6 Firebird because that's all I could afford at the time. And then 2 years later, I traded it in for a Firebird Formula. And I drove a 2001 Firebird Formula until I blew up the LS1 engine. It got water in between the cylinders, and I started it up one morning, and the motor exploded. It was the saddest day of my life. That thing, I had long tube headers on that thing, and I ran a dumped cutout about 48 inches off the long tube headers. And this was the loudest car. This car was so loud, I once started it up, and I had a group of teenagers literally duck in the road because they thought it was a drive-by shooting. I swear to God. I swear to God. My car made them hit the dirt. And then I eventually grew out of that. And I have a 2013 Camaro that I've owned for 12 years. And I love the car. But I've kind of, cars aren't my thing anymore. I still drive it occasionally because I don't like driving automatic transmission cars. I find it boring. I drive it occasionally, but I mostly drive my pickup truck now. And cars are just like, they're just like not my thing anymore. I want land, and I want a homestead, and I want fruit trees, and I want to make videos about my land and my homestead and my fruit trees and encourage more people to buy land and invest in fruit trees and live a simple, self-sufficient life where they're thankful every single day they wake up and they're not obsessed with this stupid phone and all the crap that goes on halfway around the world that they shouldn't concern themselves with. And they should just be thankful that they're here because life is short, and the best place to spend it is outside with your trees and your dog and your family. So that's my speech that you all didn't ask for. Any tips for Canadian citizens on coping with this terrible weather? I don't know how y'all do it in Canada. God bless you. You're better than me for taking it. I can't do the cold. If I lived in Canada, I think I would have to live in British Columbia, even though that's ironically the cloudiest part. But hey, the summers are awesome, and you can still grow figs, and you can grow some citrus there and some other stuff. So if you would like to become an American citizen, we welcome you with open arms. Um, but yeah, I if I lived in Canada, I would have a very big greenhouse. So I would recommend don't live in a city, live in a place where you can get land. Build a greenhouse because it's always sunny and warm in a greenhouse. Oh boy, I have to. From Spencer, have you messed around with trichoderma or Brevia piscina? I don't even know what that is, and I'm not going to pretend. I'm not going to pretend I do. So I'm good at growing vegetables, but I mean, I'm an Italian from New Jersey, so I mean, I've been growing potatoes and eggplant and tomatoes and all that stuff since I was a little kid. I worked on a corn farm growing up, but I don't know a lot of these specialized things. I hope I every year I try to grow 3 or 4 new things and open up my horizon. Um, but yeah, a lot of you folks in South Florida that are throwing out plant names, I'm not going to pretend that I know what I'm talking about some of these tropicals and subtropicals. Surround kaolin clay on tomatoes. What's your opinion? I see absolutely no reason why you couldn't do that because it's just clay. So I would say give it a try. I will tell you that surround is tough here where I live because it rains almost every day in the summer, and it's just you'd spend $1 million and all your time spraying constantly because it washes off every day. But if you live in a place that gets reasonable dry summers, yeah, I don't see why you wouldn't want to cover them in clay. How do you cure sweet potatoes? Roxanne, I hate doing this, but I would tell you to look up my video on doing so. If you just go to my channel and you type in the little search bar sweet potatoes, I have in-depth videos as to how I cure them on a seedling heat mat in a big plastic tub with a jar of water inside for humidity, and it works incredible. You can do it in 2 weeks in the corner of your room with a 48-inch seedling heat mat. Do you have a favorite paste sauce tomato? So I've been struggling to find a paste tomato that I like for years. And last year, I had incredible success with an indeterminate variety called Marzanera. But as soon as I was starting to get good harvests off of them, we got hit with this messed up weather that kind of like ruined the fruit. I don't really know how to describe it, but they almost turned mushy. So I didn't get to evaluate it very well, but the production was absolutely incredible. I haven't found a determinate one that I liked yet. I've really been struggling to find a good paste tomato, to be honest with you. And the search continues. I'm trying a new one called Roman Warrior this year. Um, and then I'm also going to try an Oxheart tomato and hope that I can maybe substitute an Oxheart tomato for a paste tomato. So we'll see how that goes. Can you take seeds from another country on a plane? Probably not legally. Um, I've never seen. I've never. Now I've only been to 9 or 10 countries over the course of my life, but every single one of them that I've ever been to don't accept seeds. My squash did nothing in Florida last year. Plant it earlier. You're letting it get too hot. You should probably be putting your squash seeds in the ground now. At this point, I'd even consider direct sowing. I look at the forecast of my property every day because I daydream about it an hour a day, and it's already 84 degrees there. So get a move on because you want to harvest your squash before June 15th. Do you have a compost pile? No, because it became overwhelmed with seeds, and weeds, and then was colonizing pests. So I made a trash can composter, and I also compost in ground in an in-ground bin that I buried. So if you type in trash can composter, you'll get my video on how to make that. It has like 3 million views. It should pop up easily. It is awesome. I recommend everybody have a couple of them, and then you just alternate them and rotate them. And you can get a trash can from Home Depot for 25 bucks. How do pollinators get through bug cloth? They don't. So I'd ask the question, what are you growing that actually needs a pollinator? Your brassicas, your lettuce, your brassicas and your lettuce and all your leafy greens don't need pollination. Your tomatoes, your peppers, your peas, they're all wind pollinated. All the cucumbers I even grow, if you grow regular monoecious cucumbers, they require pollination, but I grow almost all parthenocarpic varieties now, so they don't need pollination anymore. The only thing I grow now that need pollination are squash and melons. That's it, and they're a very big vining crop. So I grow my watermelons out in the open. They're protected with a hard shell, so nothing really gets to them. And then things like butternut squash, they're protected. Again, hard shell, nothing bothers them. The only thing that's tough is the zucchini. That's the only thing I really struggle with, and you can always hand pollinate. Do you think that the zone change last year was right? It's just data. It is what it is. The hardiness zones are updated for the recent 3rd-year period. So and they're based on the annual minimum. So a hardiness zone only accounts whatever an area's absolute lowest temperature was for one single second out of an entire year. So if you look at weather history, almost all of the record lows all throughout the United States were set in the 1980s. So when they updated the hardiness zone map for 2023, that took all of the 1980s data out of that. And the 80s data was skewing the hardiness zones abnormally cold because 1980, 84, and 89 were so horrifically bad. In fact, places were saying that we were entering back into an ice age. So you can look up old Time magazine covers that show that we're heading into an ice age. That's how bad the 80s were. So the recent hardiness zone update took that data out of the equation. So right now, the hardiness zone data is from 1990 to 2020 or 2019. So the 90s and the 2000s, for the most part, was a very, very warm period. So naturally, getting rid of that 80s data and then replacing it with the 90s and early 2000s data, obviously it's going to make things a lot warmer. Now you'll also notice that places like Texas got absolutely crushed in 21, 22, and 23, and we had a horrible year this year. But none of that data is in the hardiness zone update because it happened after that. That will be reflected in the next update, which I guess will happen in 2033. So I wouldn't be surprised if 2033, the next 10-year update, actually has the zones contract a little bit. So I think that the old hardiness zone maps were a little bit too cold, a little bit of too cold of a bias. I think that the hardiness zone maps right now may have a little bit too warm of a bias, and the real answer is somewhere in between. So that's what I personally think. I could be wrong. It's getting harder and harder to get accurate data because cities, it's really difficult because cities are big now. Data out of the 1940s or the 1950s, that location may have been a farm field, and now it might be asphalt and concrete. So obviously, if you bulldoze a farm and you put 50 concrete buildings there and black asphalt, it's going to be a lot warmer at night. So it's throwing everything off. It's really tough because there's been so much urban sprawl. So it's hard to look at this data. It really is. What is the best pot size for maximum production but space efficiency for permanent fig trees? 15 gallons is my answer. I've changed all of my fig trees almost to 15-gallon pots. They're expensive. They're worth every penny. Any tips to new gardeners to reduce costs? I already buy compost in bulk and compost at home. Start your own seeds. Don't buy transplants. Home Depot wants $6 for one plant. You can buy 3 seed packets for that and make 150 plants. So the first thing you can do, start your own seed. The second thing you should do is call around to your local landfill, transfer station, and recycling plants, and your county transfer station, your county landfill. A lot of them give out free compost and free mulch if you go and you load your own. If you can't get that, or you need delivery to your house because you don't have a pickup truck, buy bulk soil from mulch yards. It is a fraction of the cost of loading up your trunk with bags of wood chips or mulch or dirt from Home Depot or something like that. So always get the stuff delivered locally and buy it in bulk. Those are some of the best advices that I can give you, but I also want you to look at gardening as an investment. If you're going to stick with it, like any investment, you're going to lose money up front because it takes money to make money. Think of gardening like your 401k. You wouldn't look at a deduction from your paycheck as a cost. It's an investment. So it's going to cost more up front the first 3 years or 4 years while you build out your infrastructure, you invest in the trees, but you're going to get to a point where it's going to pay more than you get. I buy hardly anything from the grocery store except meat and dairy now. So I cook all of Dale's food, and then Brittany and me, we probably eat for like, I don't know, maybe like $120 a week. But keep in mind, I'm not buying chicken breast. Like we eat almost all beef. We eat very little chicken and pork. So it's more expensive meat. So I'm getting good quality, mostly grass-fed ground beef and grass-fed steaks that we get from places like Aldi and Lidl. We buy our beef from places like that. So we're basically eating, steak, eggs, dairy, and vegetables and fruit from the garden, and we're paying $120 a week. So it's worth it. You just have to look at it as a long-term investment, and you'll get there. What organic amendment can we use that has the most nutrition for plants? I don't really know how to answer that question. If you just mean fertilizer, the best thing to do is to just get yourself big bulk bags of an organic fertilizer. Like I really like the 36 and 50-pound bags of Espoma plant tone, which is 533. If you only buy one supplement for your garden, that's the one you get. Yeah, it's expensive because you have to buy, a 50-pound bag of fertilizer up front, but it's about $1 a pound. You'll get it shipped to your door for about $52 to $55, and you have enough fertilizer for the year. That's the number one thing I would recommend everybody get. Aside from that, my other favorite fertilizers are bone meal and Alaska fish fertilizer. I think if you invest in those 3 things, you'll have mostly everything you need. Why only beef? I could go into this for hours, but the short answer is it's the highest quality protein. It's the healthiest of the readily available meats that we have here, and I think it tastes the best. So farmed chicken and farmed pork, I think everybody can agree, is pretty terrible the way they do things here in the United States for the most part. And it's kind of lower quality meat. Beef, because a cow is a ruminant and it has 4 stomachs, its system purifies a lot of the crap that they feed animals out of the system. So if you don't have the money to buy all organic and grass-fed beef, it's a lot healthier. It's a lot of cleaner meat. It also has almost no polyunsaturated fat, which is not good for the human body. So it's almost a 50-50 blend of saturated and monounsaturated fat, just like the human body. So it's just a good quality meat, good quality protein. If you can't eat beef for whatever reason, the next best choice would probably be lamb. Lamb is basically the equivalent of beef. Also deer. If you're a deer hunter, wild deer is like the best stuff. It might be better than beef. Deer is awesome. I don't hunt, but when I lived in Pennsylvania, I was friends with a deer hunter that every year for Christmas would give me a bag of deer meat. And man, when he gave me that was like Christmas came early. That was awesome. Yeah, I try to eat ruminant animals. I do. That being said, I did buy a slab of pork ribs for the Super Bowl tomorrow, but that's my treat. So I'm putting that on the smoker. Bear. I've heard bear stinks. I've never had it, but I try it. Have you ever tried growing an olive tree? Yes, I have a 2.5-year-old olive tree, but it hasn't done anything yet. It's just starting to put on vertical growth, so I haven't talked about it yet. There's nothing really to show. It's just kind of sitting there. Do you ever eat venison, lower fat and cholesterol? I do not care about my dietary fat and cholesterol intake. I could not care less. It is not important. Um, that's what I believe and what my research has led. Um, don't care about cholesterol at all. That's not to say you shouldn't care about your cholesterol numbers. I'm talking about I don't care about eating cholesterol. I do care what my cholesterol is, but they don't necessarily connect. How old were you when you started gardening? I don't remember. I couldn't tell you. I could tell you I got my first job on a farm when I was 11, and I worked on a farm from ages 11 to 17. But yeah, I was in I was the one that was playing in a garden when I was in diapers. Like there's pictures of me in the garden watering things and picking things, and I have no memory of. What is your favorite cut of steak? This is something I go back and forth on. I can tell you what it isn't. It is not ribeye. Ribeye is like my 8th favorite. I don't really care for ribeye. I think it's the most overrated cut. There's so much junk that you have to cut out of it. I'm not a big fan of ribeye. It might be skirt steak. I think skirt might be my most versatile cut of steak. If you cut it the right way, it's very tender and you can eat it on your own. It makes the best tacos. It's reasonably affordable. You can find it for $7 a pound all the time. It cooks in only 3 or 4 minutes total. Skirt might be my favorite. Tri-tip, you must be from the West Coast. That's hard to find here. I do have one in my freezer though. Picanha. Picanha is the best of the steak. Picanha is a pain because the only thing I can find here is I have to go to Costco and get rib caps, which they doubled the price on, and then you have to hand butcher it yourself and then vacuum seal it all. So it's a big pain. But if you're willing to put in the work, picanha is the best meat on the cow, bar none, picanha. But for an everyday steak, I'm going to say skirt. What part of Jersey are you from? I was born in Egg Harbor City, and then I moved to a rural township called Mullica Township, and I lived there until I was 18 and then moved to Philadelphia. So Atlantic County. I spent the first 18 years of my life in Atlantic County. Brisket's my favorite barbecue cut. Love brisket, if you're willing to put in the work. Cassava. No, I've never grown cassava. Yes, you can cover your cabbage with frost cover. But the thing is, so it depends if it's still cold in your environment. Right now, I have all of my cabbage covered with a 1.5-ounce frost cover, and that's fine for now. But I would say just leave that on until it warms up a little bit, and then just switch to insect netting. Insect netting is really cheap. So go from, hey, it's cold, use 1.5 ounce, and then once it starts warming up and you don't need the cold protection anymore, just straight up switch to insect netting. I hate Costco meat prices. I think Costco meat prices are insane. I don't know how anybody is buying beef at Costco. I don't know how anybody can afford that. I certainly can't. For me, where I live, the best beef prices are at Aldi and Lidl. Aldi and Lidl are my 2 favorites by far. And then you can also get down here in the South, you can get good sales at Food Lion on occasion. So those are the only 3 places I really buy beef. And a lot of what they sell at Aldi and Lidl is grass-fed. Whoop, my grow lights just went out. Must be 10. Oh my, it's 10 o'clock. Wow, I haven't even eaten dinner yet. 91 degrees here in San Antonio. God bless. Wow. You guys in Texas have it rough. I considered buying property in Texas before I settled on Florida, but I don't know how you all go from 22 degrees in the winter to 102 degrees in the summer. It's like you can't win for losing. You guys get nice dry summers for growing things, so I'm sure stuff is great if you install shade cloth, but whew, that's tough. Piggly Wiggly does have good beef deals, but the problem is every time I go there, they never. Yeah, so I've gone to the Piggly Wiggly in Leland all the time, but they never have the stuff that's on sale in the circular there. So it's like I go there and they don't have what they say they have. So that's always annoyed me. And they always get select grade meat, which it's just a little tough. It's fine for stewing, but it's not good for eating as a steak. Are you going to do the live chat again? Yes. So now that we're in crunch time, I want to have a couple of these because a lot of people have questions this time of year. So I intend to have another one this month. I want to have one in March. So when I schedule them, I will make sure that I send out, I'll put them as a schedule so everybody gets a notification. That way I'll give you 3 or 4 days heads up. How do you get your teeth so light? You know, I've never had braces. I've never had a cavity, never anything like that. And what I've learned over the years is that all this stuff, so your teeth are your hardest bones in your body. And the other thing is dental care never existed until what, a couple of decades, a couple of generations ago. So your teeth aren't supposed to yellow. You're not supposed to need braces. You're not supposed to get cavities. It's nutrient deficiencies. It's fat soluble vitamins A, D, and K. So obviously, we live in a place where red meat has been demonized. The red meat that we do have is not grass-fed anymore, so it doesn't have that nice yellow fat that contains all the vitamin A. We sit indoors all day, so we don't get vitamin D, and we drink reduced fat milk, which doesn't have vitamin K. So you got to eat grass-fed beef. You got to eat full-fat dairy. You got to get outside in the sun, and you got to take this, which is a K2D supplement. So you got to get replete in your fat soluble nutrients. You got to eat egg yolks, which people said were bad for 40 years, which is insane. All the nutrients is in the yolk. So you got to get your fat soluble vitamins, and your teeth will just stay naturally white. At least that's my opinion. I don't mean to sound like I don't mean to sound like I'm really hardcore in the health or anything like that. But I just believe in, taking care of yourself and trying to eat as naturally as possible. Braces are a scam. Braces are not a scam. If you need braces, you need braces, and you better get them. But if you eat a very nutritious diet from day one, you shouldn't need them. But unfortunately, a lot of people grow up eating crackers and chicken fingers, and you're going to need braces if you do that. You got to eat about real food. Will you sell any fig cuttings? So I already pruned my trees, and I'm not going to have time this year to sell fig cuttings. I actually called my buddy Phil in town, and he came and he picked up all my old cuttings, so I gave them to him, so they won't go to waste. But I just don't have time this year to do the selling. It takes like literally 100 hours to pack and ship them all. I hope one day I can do this full time, and that'll give me the time to start doing that again, but it's just too busy now this time of year. The fig breeding is going great. I uploaded a video last August or September where I showed you 10 new varieties that all fruited for me, and they were all amazing. I was so excited. So I want to give them a few more years of evaluation because fig cuttings to new varieties sell for exorbitant amount of money. And if I release fig cuttings into the ecosystem, because they will be notable because I bred them and people will sell them for insane amounts of money. And because they will be notable because I bred them and people will sell them for insane amounts of money. And if they are mediocre, I don't want more mediocre figs in an ecosystem where there are already a million mediocre figs. So I'm committing to only releasing fig cuttings if they are truly good. I'm not going to give you 10 figs that are just okay. They have to be good. And when I verify that they are good, I will release them. But it's probably going to take another 3 or 4 years until I reach that conclusion. How can I send you a biostimulant to try? I don't know what that means. Does coffee make you poop? Oh, I have 2 mugs that say so, so it must be true. What about forever chemicals and mulch or compost? Look, when it comes, anything you grow in a backyard garden is going to be better than anything you get at the grocery store. Even if you are buying organic food at the grocery store, organic ends the moment it leaves the farm. So if it was organic when it left the farm, but then they threw everything in with all the conventional produce and everything is bumping and rubbing each other, or if it's being handled with the same hands that handled the conventional produce, the organic stuff from the store is going to be basically, it'll still be better, but it will be partially compromised. So just worry about doing the best you can. We don't have unlimited budgets. Nothing's perfectly clean. What I can tell you is that people are not dying of diseases caused by eating too many fresh fruits and vegetables from the garden that you're growing right outside your back door, right? So all you can do is do the best you can. Try to cut the crap out of your diet. You know, try to only drink water. Try to eat the cleanest foods that you can, and just know that we're all going to die someday. So enjoy whatever you can out of life. So you got to have some fun. So don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. What you're doing in your garden is better than anything they're doing at a store. Will determinate tomatoes I grew last year and store indoors work, or only indeterminate over the winter? I don't think I really understand the question. If you mean, will determinate tomatoes I grew last year and stored indoors work, or only indeterminate over winter? Do you mean you still have some tomatoes left over and you want to grow them from the seed that you saved from those tomatoes? If so, if the tomatoes are still fine, they should work, but you'll have to ferment the seed. I think that tomato seed has to be partially fermented for them to grow, or they won't germinate. Do you grow any varieties of blueberries? I made a video 3 or 4 years ago. I think it was called, it's like the best guide to growing blueberries on the internet or something like that. And it shows every variety of blueberries that I'm growing. I'm growing rabbit eye and southern highbush varieties. I think they are Titan and Crewer are my rabbit eye, and my southern highbush are Star and O'Neill. That's O''Neal. And out of all the ones that I'm growing, Star is the best. Star is absolutely off the charts productive. It's phenomenal. Maddie D, do you eat fish? I don't not eat fish. It's just my least favorite of the beef, lamb, chicken, pork fishes down at the bottom. It's just not my favorite. So, and it's also the most expensive. So I don't eat a lot of it because, like, why pay the most money for the thing that I enjoy the least? But I do love crab. I do love shrimp. I like everything. I eat everything. There's nothing that I don't like. It's just I have preferences. Will you grow pomegranates? Yes, I have a pomegranate. I have a Parfianca pomegranate that I planted last year, but it's not really big enough to really talk about yet. What do you do besides gardening? I am a full-time electrical engineer. Pink lemonade blueberry. Ah, yeah, I also have a pink lemonade. Yeah, that one is amazing as well. My problem is it hasn't been super productive, but the flavor is unlike anything I've ever had before. It's fantabulous. Can I send you a product to try in your garden? I know it will be helpful. Uh, I mean, I do appreciate it, but I don't really have the time to commit to a whole bunch of stuff. And I already work 80 to 100 hours a week before the full-time job and all of this. This is why it's 10:10 and I still haven't eaten dinner. This is my life every night, people. I don't eat until 9:30 at least every single night. That's how much I love doing this stuff genuinely. So I don't want to make a commitment and take things from people and then not honor my commitments, which is one reason why I've never made a sponsored video before. I haven't had time. Ever grafted tomatoes? No, but I'm going to try for the first time this year. I was going to keep it a secret, but I'll mention it now. So I have bad root knot nematodes in my soil. So I'm going to try an experiment where I'm growing an African eggplant variety that is very resistant to it, and I'm going to try to graft tomato scions onto it. So I want to see if I can grow a tomato on an eggplant. I don't know if it'll work, but I'm going to give it a try because the roots on this thing were unbelievable last year. And I want to see if it makes me have a healthier tomato, just for fun. Best fertilizer for berries is going to be a mix of an all-purpose fertilizer, like a granular 555, that you then blend sulfur prills into, which is elemental sulfur to lower your pH. If you don't want to do that, just go outside and get yourself some Espoma Hollytone. It's really affordable, and it's basically just it's basically plant tone that has sulfur added to make it more acidic. It's good stuff. So blueberries use Hollytone. Holly, I'm really glad I could spend the time with you all. Thank you so much to everybody that's joined this live stream. I really appreciate your attendance. I'm sorry to anyone whose questions I didn't get to ask. I did the best I can, but I tend to sometimes ramble on, so sorry if I did that too much. But I really appreciate you all attending. At this point, I think I'm going to call it quits for the night. But thank you all so much. I will commit to having another one of these at some point later this month, and I'll also try to do one in March, if not April as well. Now that we're in the spring gardening season, I really want to try to answer as many of your questions as possible. So thank you all so much for subscribing to my channel. Thank you for taking the time to join this live stream. I love you all very much, and Dale and I both say good night and best of luck with the new gardening season. I'll see you all soon.